goals for today. We're going to look at various hand examples from my database. I want to kind of show differences in chip EV, how we want to play certain spots versus risk premium adjusted strategies, ICM adjusted. So some charts with like 50% of the field left, 25% of the field left. How does that, like when we're in the money, how are these types of spots going to change how we approach playing versus the open race? Um, Finding heuristics, the most common hands that we want to rejam, call, and fold. And then also, studying spots with mixed stack sizes to the best of our ability. So, a lot of the charts you see are equal stacks. Everyone has 20 big blinds, everyone has 15 big blinds, especially like 12 big blinds when there's, a split strategy where people are shoving some hands, raising some hands, and it plays much different if not everyone has 12 big blinds. So we're going to be looking into some of that. So to start off with, kind of a basic question I want to ask, and just to get some participation in there, what are some of the main reasons we like to shove over an open when we start to get short stacked? What are some of the main benefits of why this is like a powerful move? Get better hands to fold. I'm going to reword that also to get high equity hands to fold. Yep, I like realize our equity. It's a good one. Fold equity. Yeah, that can type into this as well. I like that. Deny equity to multiple callers behind. I like that one. Just kind of like a good risk reward ratio on winning chips preflop. So, yeah, I think that, yeah, so picking up chips, valuable to our stack. I think that all kind of goes into this like good risk reward ratio on winning chips preflop. So all good reasons why we want to. This is like a very powerful move in no limit hold'em. Um, However, like I want to talk a little about this. Like I think flat calling is still an option that's like very underutilized when playing with shorter stacks. A lot of people like will play a strategy where they never call unless they're in the big blind with under 20 big blinds. Players tend to get lazy in their 20 big blinds and less options, are giving up lots of EV by either not VPipping enough or VPipping too much. Um, I think this is something that we'll find out today. We'll get to work on this in quiz. I think this is just one of those spots that like even experienced players kind of ignore and don't study enough. And after a while, they get kind of rusty at these spots, and they come up very often. So they're pretty important in terms of, yeah, the EV differences might be not that great in terms of one hand, but because the frequency is very high, it ends up being a pretty high EV to your overall strategy. Um, Field sides remaining, how close to the money often has a big impact on how we want to approach these spots. So we're going to kind of look in that today as well. Kind of just some general rules that a lot of people are probably already like accustomed to, but I just wanted to put in there. A lot of times we're splitting our range, and this is where it gets kind of difficult when we have less than 20 big blinds. We're splitting our range into a 3-bet induced range and a shove range. So putting our strongest hands like aces, kings, queens, ace, king suited into a 3-bet range and adding various bluffs. Shoving hands that are too strong to flat call but not strong enough to induce with a small 3-bet. Examples of these types of hands: suited broadways, big offsuit hands like ace, queen, ace, jack, king, queen. Medium to small pairs often go into the shoving hands. And then hands just below like these two ranges often can still be called because equity realization is fairly high at lower stack depths. I think people underestimate how much they can call in these spots, especially in late position, like the um, button, small blind, and big blind. Um, we'll kind of ignore the big blind a little bit today just because you get a call so much and there's not as much 3-betting and shoving going on. So we'll kind of work from like the small blind backwards. But I think people underestimate how much they get a call, and that's when you're using these charts where people are like squeezing very aggressively. And so when people don't squeeze enough or rejam enough, for example, you can call even more because you're going to realize more equity. Some of the biggest mistakes that I notice are, this is a big one, not paying attention to what the EV of a jam or a call is when looking at charts. So the key question here is, how sensitive is the combination to adjustments? I Can this combination become a fold very easily if this player is opening too tight or if they're opening too loose? How sensitive, how much of a leeway do we have in terms before this hand turns into like a bad play, or calling becomes better than jamming, or jamming becomes better than calling? I'd say rejamming small pairs too much versus early position opens. Calling range is too tight. Small pairs don't maintain enough equity versus the tight calling range to rejams from early position. For example, hands like 9-9 and 8-8 are often just flat calls late position versus early position with 20 big blinds, because we will fold out hands like 7s and 8s when we shove, and so we just don't have enough equity versus the calling range um, to be shoving with these smaller pairs. Um, Not jamming enough with suited broadways, another mistake. They maintain great equity versus the calling range. For example, Jack 10 suited, having two overcards to pocket nines, and also having live cards against Ace Queen and Ace King. Also has good, decent, like, underrated blockers to blocking like pocket jacks, pocket tens. Another mistake, over jamming Ace X suited hands when opponents can call wide. So when opponents can call hands like pocket fives and pocket sixes to your rejams. So this would be like in a lot of chip EV spots. Rejams with ace deuce through ace four suited go down a lot because they will often be dominated versus the calls. These hands perform best against tight calling ranges where the ace blocker is more relevant, and having an overcard to king king is important. So the best example of this is like high ICM spots, where these like ace x suited hands get really really valuable to rejam because the calling range is so tight. They maintain their equity very well against tight calling ranges. And finally, not adjusting enough to openers pre-flop ranges. So players do not open it wide enough for late position, so we should be rejamming less. This kind of ties into how sensitive is the combination to the adjustments. We're going to talk about some ICM adjustments and implications today. So like rejamming quickly deteriorates for more than 20 big blinds. As more risk premium is introduced, the risk reward goes down significantly, and so we don't want to be rejamming quite as much in these spots. So these are just some of the thoughts that I had that I wanted to start off with before we get into some hands, which will be the bulk of the seminar. We'll probably do a trainer at the end for some preflop stuff, and we're going to be using Preflop Academy for some of these ranges. But I think it's still better to kind of run your own preflop spots in this, and you can also then make adjustments like, well, what if they're opening 5% tighter or 5% looser? How does that change my strategy? You can like change stack sizes, and so I think that's like the best way to study these spots effectively. I wish I could do that today, but we won't be able to. Like a good way to learn on these spots is changing one variable at a time. So like run it just as it is, and then like what if this player had, what if you had like 5 big blinds more, 5 big blinds less? What if you add an ICM? That type of stuff is very helpful in terms of learning how to make adjustments on your own in certain spots. Okay, first spot. All right, what do you guys want to do here? So we're just gonna fire through a bunch of these spots, show you kind of how I look them up, and then yeah. So first, actually, let's two things here. I want to do So first we're going to look in Chip EV, and the reason I changed it and asked that because this is obviously probably not in Chip EV. I don't remember what this hand was. Actually, when was this from? Oh, I can tell you what this hand is from. This is from day 2 of the 109, like 500K they had on ACR a week and a half ago on the OSS. So first we're going to talk about chip EV here, okay? And so take a second again, you guys. We're gonna go here. We're gonna go chip EV, and like one of the cool things here with Preflop Academy is we can do. So we had what 17 big blinds. How many big blinds do we have? I don't feel like doing math, so we're gonna do that. Back to 17 big blinds. So we'll do 17 and a half. But this is a really cool thing. So we're gonna do. We're not against a 17 and a half big blind open, and the reason that's important because so let's just say I do it as regular verse raise first in. We're against the button cutoff hijack low jack. Okay, we're against the low jack. We're in the small blind versus the low jack. So if everyone had 17 and a half big blinds, this is the strategy here. And we're playing pretty much pure call with chip EV, 17 and a half big blinds. And a big thing here is like if you look here, this range is going to be tighter than it would be versus a 30 big blind open. So this is 20.5% open. If we do it versus a 30 big blind, so this is going to mean everyone else has 30 big blinds and we have 17 and a half big blinds. So let's just keep in mind of this opening range. It's 20 and a half. If we do this, now it's 25.4, right? So now it's 25.4 instead of 20. So there's an extra 5% opening range here. And if we look here, does this make sense here? Like, not a rejam stack, not a rejam stack, not a rejam stack. There is like a rejam stack here and here, so he should be slightly tighter, this player. But I think it's probably closer to this range. Yeah, I think it's probably closer to this range than the other range. And we can see here, when we go back to the regular range, we're calling with a lot of these suited connectors. We're calling, or suited aces. We're calling with queen 8 suited, jack 8 suited, jack 9 suited, like calling with these suited connectors, king jack off. So there's a lot of calling that goes on. Actually, equal amounts calling all in. And I think a lot of people are like mostly all in here and very rarely ever flat. And if you think about it, like, what's most of your strategy from the big blind here? What's the most common, like, fold, call, 3-bet, or shove? Like, what's the most common you do from the big blind? You call. Okay. So, what's different from the small blind? Well, you're getting slightly worse pot odds, and you have one more player to act. So, like, you should be calling less, but you still are, like, pretty incentivized to call a lot from the small blind because you're getting better pot odds than you are from the button. So I think this is a spot that like people do not call close to enough in chip EV. Okay, so it's like this spot's probably pretty close in chip EV because like we're calling when they're opening like 20% of their hands, and when they're opening 25%, we're shoving. So or calling. It's still kind of a mix here. So what like determines here whether we want to call or shove? Like we can kind of pretty safely assume fold is not a good option here in chip EV, but it's more we're focused on what's their opening range. That's what's important here because that determines how often we get folds, and that's like the most important in our risk reward. So how much fold equity you have, and the wider they open, the more fold equity we have. Okay, so very like key point. That's like paying attention to how sensitive we want to be here. And even here it's mixing, so like on the safe side, calling's probably like the safer play because it's probably more likely like people are opening a little bit tighter maybe. So but now what we're going to do is we're going to change this to say this is pretty deep. I believe this is probably the start of day 2 and we're not quite in the money left. So we're going to say there is 17.5% of the field left. Okay, so 15% of the field pays, and there's 17.5% of the field left. Okay, so we're pretty much on the money bubble. So in that scenario, then, what do you guys think we should be doing with ace 4 clubs here? I'm gonna say it's close between like a three bet, non all in to like five big blinds and like a shove. Um, what would you guys do here with pocket eights? I actually think eights are gonna fold. I think eights are gonna fold, and I think this is either gonna three bet or shove, because the reason I'm thinking this, and obviously I could be wrong, very easily could be wrong. If we shove with eights, I think like sixes and sevens are folding. And so essentially eights are just like the only advantage of having eights versus ace four suited is basically like you're in a flip versus ace king. But like having the blocker to the call is going to be more important in that spot. So let's go ahead and see here. Let's play around with some of this. So let's go 17.5% of the field left. And let's say like here we can look at, see which one we'll look actually here. Let's see first when everyone has equal stacks. So we don't have 17, we're going to say 20, and we'll look at 15 as well. Versus race first in, we're in the small blind versus the low jack. So this is 20 big blinds, 17.5% of the field left, and it is ace four suited is still shoving these wheel aces, king queen, king jack, king 10. So it's more so like three bet bluffing with like the ace six, the weaker suited aces, ace deuce, and the pairs are still shoving. Let's just see here the EV, and it's built around aces and kings and ace king suited here. Let's look at 15 big blinds really quick, and at 15 now still shoving these hands, and the calling range is, let's see here, let's do verse three bet, low jack versus small blind. So low jack versus all in. So they're calling with like tens plus, nines plus, ace jack suited. So this is where my point was about them not having that. But most people are going to be opening way wider than this because it doesn't even have them opening. If we go raise first in, the low jack at like let's say 20 big blinds, like, so this is why like the small pairs here, it's a very blocker heavy range. So let's actually do something here. Now it's with different stack sizes. So we're going to look at this one here with, we're in the small blind with 18 against this 38 big blind low jack open. So let's look at here the raise first in range from the low jack. Yes, it still like includes now smaller pairs. This is probably a more reasonable range that we're up against. So we're going to go raise first in, small blind versus low jack. So this is the 38 big blind open versus the 18 big blind small blind. So I think this is probably a more relevant answer in this type of spot. And you see like ace four suited still wants to shove, like ace five, ace four, ace three. These ones have been pretty resilient. What changes is how we want to. So here now we're shoving kings instead of just three betting small. So now we need less bluffs. So these hands are more folding. Something interesting here is like sevens are folding, sixes are pretty close, fives are pretty close. So the threshold here is 0.5. So we're already in the pot for 0.5. So like pocket eights here you see is making 0.54, which would be a lot, but really it's only making 0.04. And so it's making 0.04, so it's pretty marginal. Pocket nines, like I can do this edge thing. That doesn't work up here. Like even pocket nines is, yeah, that's making like 0.18. It's making quite a bit. Now like tens is where it's making a lot of money. So the really safe ones are going to be like, now you can just like compare hands. Like, so eights are making 0.04. Like, would you rather shove pocket eights or king queen suited? Like, king queen's making 0.64. Eights are making 0.54. So it's kind of nice to compare these. Queen jack suited's making more than eights. King 10 suited's making as much as eights. King jack suited's making a little bit more. Ace queen off's making way more. So H5 suited's making less than eights here. So kind of a cool way of like spanning here. Let's just look to see here with like 25% of the field left in the same spot First raise, first in, small blind versus low jack. So this is interesting. So now with 25% of the field left, it's actually just folding. Kind of interesting. It was like a call in chip EV and then a shove once we get closer. A lot of the calls going away. So I think this is really close in this spot. I folded here, which I think is probably too tight, even if we're not in the money or on the money bubble. It's probably just a rejam, or like this is like a pretty close spot here. I think, depending on, I don't know if we're in the money here. So all right, let's just move along here. Similar spot here. Okay, what do you guys think here? I think calling is definitely going to be the play here in like chip EV. In terms of as we get more ICM involved, I think this hand is going to become closer to like a 3-bet bluff potentially than a call. But we do need to be tighter, as in this, we have like this player does not have as much risk premium against us since they have us covered by a decent amount. So again, I think this is a pretty close spot here. We can just look up something like 25% of the field left. This is like EP. We can look at like MP. We're in the small blind again, 18 big blinds. And you can see here like ace-5 suited folding, ace-3 suited folding. Like it's like there's some blocker stuff going on. So like it's pretty selective here with like these suited aces as a bluff. We do have a 3-bet folding range here. So like 3-bet folding like ace-jack, ace-10 a little bit, and like ace-8 and ace-7 suited. This range should be tighter opening into the big stack here with some ICM pressure. So if this range is opening tighter, we should be playing tighter as well. So for that reason, and probably calling becomes worse of an option and letting this guy into the pot. So I fold here. We're probably either near the money or in the money, so there's some ICM pressure here. So make a fold here, which I think is probably good. There was a good point brought up about having the big stack here, how that affects our decisions. These hands are like sorted by dates. On this date, I remember, is the only I played this. I just one tabled this day too. Okay, ICM, we're folding this, but let's say this is chip EV. What are we doing? What do you guys do here if this is chip EV? So in chip EV, this hand's probably going to call. So this is going to be like kind of an important like. So we go chips, and let's say we have 12.5 big blinds in the small blind. So let's say first everyone has 12.5 big blinds. So if everyone has 12.5, you can see here, small blind versus cutoff, we basically just shove, right? Not much calling going on. And the reason is because we're up against like a very, very strong polarized range, and so we're going to be wanting to rejam, blocking the calls, and folding out these bluffs, and we're getting a very good risk reward. So in terms of though, when we do this option, so say everyone has 30 big blinds, so they're opening much wider. So here they're raising only 9% of hands. Okay, so they're raising 9% of hands, and so if we do this, look at how much calling we get to do now. So like hands like king 8 suited, queen 8 suited, jack 8 suited, 10 8 suited, king 5 suited is making a little bit, king 6, king 4, king 8. Lots of calling that goes on. And the reason is because we get to realize a lot of equity. Like we just like the closer you are to 0 chips, the closer you are to all in. And when you're all in, you realize 100% of your equity. So it's basically a pot odds problem. And you're getting such great pot odds, and you're not going to have to fold as much post flop in these spots. So, and you can notice here, there's not even really any strong hands. Like it's still shoving aces most of the time. So it's not like the range is protected or anything like that. We're just calling for the expected value of like to see a flop and hit our hand here in this type of a spot. So this doesn't work when everyone has like a short stack because the range is too polarized. But when this range gets wider, that's when calls start to come in these spots. All right, finally, we're not in a spot with the day two hands are gone, so that's good. What do you guys want to do here? This looks like 400, 800, clearly chip EV. Yeah, these types of hands perform very good at shoves. What do you guys want to do here? It's pretty close with the player behind. Let's just see here. First raise first in, small blind versus cutoff. Small blind versus raise first in, and you can see here like King 10 suited is making quite a bit of money here. Small blind versus cutoff. King 9 suited is losing a lot, so there's a big difference between King 9 and King 10 here. If we look at the all-in range, it's like ace X, suited aces, pairs. Like there's not even threes and deuces here. Like I think this is they're more likely to probably be too wide than too tight in this spot. So I would call here as well. I think this should be a call. This is probably a mistake to fold here. Okay, what do you guys want to do here? So we got this person opening off of 15, and we have Queen 8 suited. So like if everyone had 20 big blinds, I think this is a pretty clear call. It gets tough though when this guy has like a more polarized opening range. Like they're not opening pocket fives, for example. Like that hand's just going to go all in. So pretty interesting spot here. I'm actually not really sure. 15. If I had to guess, I think it probably can mix calls. Let's see here. Pull up the right screen. We'll just look at 15 equal versus raise first in, small blind versus button. Yeah, it's that's versus all in. So when they get this like short in the opening range, like this is their all like you can see like the range is more polarized because they have shoves now. So I take the and so the Queen 8 suited just goes way down in value when they don't have Ace 9 off in their range, when they don't have King Jack off in their range. So the more polarized the range get, these calls go away. It's more so when they're opening off a big stack that we can call. And like you can see here, calling is worth 0. So it's pretty close, but I think fold. So it's always like this would be like always a really good note to take that they are capable of finding raise folds off of 15 big blinds. Yeah, if he has like 20 big blinds, I'd probably flat. Yeah. Yeah, I think this is a good open. This is a hand, like this hand could probably shove too. Queen 8 suited is probably could shove as well and just open weaker. 7 bigs, shove there. Actually, what we're going to do now is we're actually going to go to the button because I think this is where people start to make some mistakes. These are kind of spots that I really struggle with. So, oh yeah, this is the Venom, I think, potentially. What do you guys think here with Queen Jack offsuit? This is like an interesting spot, I think. So we have 7 big blinds here on the button, 2 big blind open here. What do you guys want to do here with Queen Jack offsuit? Okay, first off, do we have any hands that just call here? Do we ever just call? And then if we are in the small blind, do we ever have a calling range? If we're in the small blind, do we have a calling range here with 6 big blinds? I think this hand actually can call on the button. And the reason is a couple of reasons. One, I think it's too strong to fold. 2, we don't have any fold equity pre-flop. And so, like process of elimination, I think we call the button, and if either of these players go all in, we just call the all in. And the reason we can call with here, I think some with Queen Jack offsuit is like there's some flops that we can fold when it comes to like, Ace Ace Deuce, or I'm just not sure if this hand is strong enough to shove, but I think we get some all ins here, potentially for sure in the small blind. I think this hand would call. Let's see here. So what we're going to do here is say we have 8 big blinds versus, let's do this chip EV. We're going to say we have the button here. So here's with 6 big blinds. Let's see here. And we're up against the hijack with 18. So reverse raise first in, we're the button versus the hijack. And you can see here there are calls. So it does use in chip EV like aces to protect it, but like hands like Jack 10 suited that are too good to fold, 10 9 suited, Queen 9 suited, King 9 suited, these hands that are like not strong enough to go all in with no fold equity. And like here's Queen Jack off, and you can see here I have this like edge thing where it's like it's right on the borderline here of it's not strong enough to go all in because we have no fold equity, but and this is like if we had 6. Curious, I wish we had let's check GTO Wizard really quick here. Yeah, you can see like we get a decent calling range here with even 8 big blinds on the button. So this is with like 8. You can see like calling a decent amount of hands here that are like just not weak enough with no fold equity, but they call and then they're kind of call off if anyone squeezes, and then there's a few flops that they can fold. Here, Queen Jack off is folding. Yeah, King Jack off is calling, so it's like really close. But here, if we were the small blind, let's look at the same thing. Let's switch this now and say if we're the small blind with like 8 or 7 big blinds. This is a perfect one. And keep in mind though that was versus a low jack open and not a hijack. So a hijack raises and then it folds to us on the. So here, oh that's with 19. So here in the small blind, like now look at this in the small blind. Like we have 6.5 big blinds. Look how much calling we're doing. Queen 7 suited, 10 8 suited, Ace 3 off, 8 7 suited, King 3 suited. Just calling off in these spots a lot in the small blind because we have like just enough pot odds and we're going to realize all our equity. I think I like calling here. I think it's close, but if there's no ICM here, I really think I like calling because I think people are going to make mistakes here later on in the hand. But when you get this short, yeah, you're just trying to flop any equity basically and get it in. When you get this short, like shoving, there's no point in shoving with a hand that has no fold equity. That's going to be a dog versus the calling range. What do we do with the opener is a little tighter? Like some of the calls will start to go away versus later position opens. So the EV of calling goes down, so we're going to call less hands. So like here's another one. Like I think this is like a crystal clear call. Yeah, if you get squeezed, you have to call. Yeah. Like, what do you guys think here? Like, how many of you have a calling range here? Like, I think this is for sure almost a call. I think this is a mistake to fold. I remember this is the Venom, so like it looks like it's big chips, but it's early on in the tournament. So here, button, 8 big blinds. This is perfect. So like cutoff raises, fold, fold, raise. I guess with 8, it's saying we have enough fold equity. What's going on here? Oh, this range is really tight because this range. See, so it doesn't work when they have a shoving range like this because there's 2 short stacks behind. Let's see what Preflop Academy has where we have like 6 big blinds on the button versus the cutoff. Let's look at that. Yeah, like here's with 6 big blinds. Like it's making 7 big blinds per 100. So it's making quite a bit here too. Yeah, so you can call pretty wide in these spots here when you get really, really, really short. I think I should call there. Let's see here. Not gonna ask here. Easy all in for 9s. There we go. Got a shove, easy one there. Cool. What do you guys want to do here? We have Queen 8 suited, 20 big blinds. Let's just assume chip EV. What do we think we should be doing here? I think here's a chip EV I think we can call. Let's do Chip EV, 20 big blinds. We're up against a 30 big blind open from the button from low jack. Cut off hijack actually won earlier. Yeah, it's close. Yeah, queen 9. Someone mentioned suited 9s I would call. Queen 8 suited is a fold. Um, yeah, so it's pretty close if it's versus the low jack. Where do we have to get this? Not even versus the button. Okay. In terms of, I just want to point out here. So like, I'm gonna switch this to 50% of the field left. And I'm guessing like these queen 9 suited, jack 9 suited, these kind of borderline ones start to go away as we get to like 50% of the field left. I'm folding hands like pocket fours, threes, and deuces. Yeah, so they start to go away in ICM. Yep, 100%. So I think this is close. I folded. Seems like it was a good fold. All right, 20 big blinds. I have no idea where this is in the tournament, so we'll just assume chip EV. I think this is really, really, really close. And I think calling is probably fine. I think three betting a very little bit of the time is probably fine. And I'm trying to decide if we ever get a fold. I'm not sure if we get a fold this or not. So we're going to do, let's say here we have 18 versus actually let's just do this. We'll do chip EV, 20 big blinds. Everyone has it. So we're actually going to look at two things here. Actually, we're against two big blind raise here. So we're going to look versus min raise, and we're going to look versus 2.3. Because we should also be sensitive to the open size. So we're going to do, we are the button versus the cutoff. So this is versus a min raise. And this is what we're looking at. It's mixing between call and fold. So it's like basically a straight borderline hand. Makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of people kind of saw that it was a borderline hand here. But now we're going to change this. What's going to happen when I make this a 2.3x? We're going to fold. It's probably going to be a pure fold. Yeah. So now it's like pretty much a pure fold because we're getting worse pot odds. So we should always be sensitive as well to the open size. Also look here. Like this is kind of a cool thing to change. With two big blinds, we're like flat aces and kings, which I think makes a lot of sense. Look what happens when we make it 2.3. The EV of flat calling goes down, so we start shoving more with these hands. If we make it 2.5, boom, we're just shoving, and then versus like a 3x, let's see here. Now we just play like a shove fold strategy with 3x. There's too much money in the pot now. So the bigger they make it, actually, the more we want to shift to this all-in strategy, the bigger size they make it. So like fold's fine here. What do you guys think here? What do you guys think the worst offsuit ace you should shove here is? Worst offsuit ace you should shove here. I'm gonna say ace jack offsuit. I think, yeah, we have 16, not 20. I think it's like ace jack. I think like ace 10 off I would call. I don't think I would shove ace 10 off here. I'm folding this, but let's see here. So we're like 17. Perfect. 17 and a half. Or versus, so this is like important here because this is like linear opening range. So 17, we are the button versus the hijack. Yeah, it is ace 9. See, like this is what I was talking about. I'm too tight in these spots. Although it is close with like calling here. See here, like the EVs are calling are the same, but ace jack is, yeah. So I'm like too tight in these types of spots. Rejamming. These are like the spots I really wanted to look at. What's the worst offsuit ace you would shove here? Ace jack off, I'm just calling. I'm just going to call here with ace jack off. I think this one I think is going to always shove. Ace 10 off. It's probably between fold and maybe 3-bet bluff, some people mention. We against a linear range. Yeah. Yeah. So ace jack is, so here they play like in chips like no 3-bet fold. So they're just flatting with aces and kings. Um, they're too good to shove. But like ace ten's calling, ace jack. So I just pointed that out because I was pretty confident ace 10 wasn't going to shove. Notice here like sixes, fives, fours. There is sevens here. I thought that would be. Let's change it to 20. Yeah, like here's eights, sevens, sixes. Yeah. Whoa, we went. Actually, now ace jack was. I thought ace jack would call. Never mind then. Sorry, I was reading it wrong. Yeah, it just doesn't realize this. Ace jack suited wants to call. So like it's another good like good point here is like you tend to want to call more with the suited combination. So ace jack suited is shoving or calling, but ace jack offsuit is shoving. So again, I'm being like too conservative with these offsuit combos. Okay. What do you guys want to do here? I think calling's probably fine. I think this is too tight. I think we can call here. I think we have just enough equity here with 10-9 suited, but it's probably pretty close. Okay, what do you guys want to do here? Yeah, so calling is going to definitely go down the earlier the position we are. So we're definitely be calling less here. Let's just assume, and I've been doing a lot of studying with like 50% of the field left. So let's say there's 50% of the field left. So we're not quite in chip EV, but we are like in some ICM, like a little bit. We're starting to get a little bit ICM. Like, what do you guys think now? King queen off, like 50% of the field left. What do you think we want to do here? So what's going on here? I think this hand's too strong to fold. Um, I think this is going to be a lot of. So if we're not calling much, we transition a lot more to like three betting a little bit more linearly and not as much shoving. I'm actually very curious here. So we're button cut off, hijack versus low jack. I'm guessing this hand's going to mix three bet fold a lot, and I'm curious if we ever fold here. I don't think we're going to jam. What percentage of the field do ICM use to come in? Like, I mean, as soon as you like buy into the tournament, there's some ICM. It's more of a question of when you should start really considering it. I start around like half the field, and to be honest, like the bigger your edge is, the earlier you should probably start considering it. Um, I consider it pretty early on. I'm playing a lot more around with like these types of ranges than chip EV ranges nowadays. So we're gonna say 20 big blinds, first raise, first in. We are the hijack versus low jack. And we do have some calls here, which is good to know. It's protected a little bit by aces and a little bit by kings. And so what this does is like calling sometimes with aces and kings, it allows us to call some of these weaker hands. That's basically why there's a difference in EV and aces and kings. And all the calling is allowing us to do is to flat some of these other hands so we don't get jammed on as much. So king queen is used as a bluff sometimes here. Ace jack also, and then flatting like some of these middling pairs like nines and eights and sevens, some of the weaker suited broadways, and then some of the bigger suited aces. Don't have versus 2.2 in this. Um, but these are the ranges I've started to like use a lot, especially like in live poker where you have really big edges. Kind of even when there's not ICM, like I consider it like I have a risk premium on my chips because I have like a big skill edge on the field. So I've really like tightened up a little bit. Yeah, three bet fold all in, correct. So I think this is close. So I did go for a three bet. This is like the size I would use with everything. spot now. I'm going to start running some. Next thing I kind of want to work on is running scripts for with some ICM involved with these like 50% of the field left ranges to see how that changes from chip EV. All right, let's do that again. 50% of the field left. What do you guys want to do here with Queen Jack suited? I think this is close between shove. I think I probably just shove here. This is standard. Man, I folded here. It seems so tight. I mean, this could be like near a money bubble or something. I'm not sure. Let's see. Look here. So we're button cut off, hijack, low jack. So 2 off of the low jack. So we do this. Let's see here. What position are we? Button cut off, hijack versus that. So let's see here. We have 18, and so we'll look at this and we'll say hijack versus EP. Yeah, it's just a pure jam. Queen 10 suited can flat. It's not strong enough to jam. Jack 10 suited is starting to be out. All these smaller pairs are out. So I mentioned like people rejam these pairs too much. This is at 18, and we can look here where everyone has 15 just to see. Now you can see like it's still pretty resilient. Like we're up against a tighter range now, and we're still just jamming Queen Jack suited. But like Queen 10 suited is out now. Just too strong. These suited broadways are pretty resilient, especially like the King Queen King Jack Queen Jack. King 10, Queen 10, Jack 10. These are where you start to see variability. Ace Jack off folding now. So there. All right, what do you guys want to do here? I fold here. There's too many players left to act. I think in chip EV, this might sneak in there in chip EV, but it's still just with this many players left to act. I think we just have to fold to the open jam. And if there's any ICM here, this probably is going to definitely be a fold. It's good. I'd like to see that. What do you guys think here? So this player opens off of 12 big blinds, and we have 2 6s. Let's assume we had 12 big blinds as well. And if you say fold, what's the worst pair you would jam? So a key thing here is like this range doesn't really have pocket 7s in it anymore, because that hand's probably just shoving. So if we look here at the low jack, let's just look in chip EV here. 12.5 big blinds, RFI from the low jack. So if you have 12 big blinds in the low jack, this is what I mean. It's a very polar range. So it's like 9s plus, big suited aces, king queen suited, and then the bluffs are like king jack, queen jack, king 10, ace 9, ace 8, and like some suited aces. So it's like a pretty polarized range because now it's shoving with these hands. I think people would be surprised how tight we play versus this. Almost for sure 6s are a fold here. I would say like looking at this, like I don't even know if 9s are a good raise because you block some of these ace 9 offs. You do block some of the value though. Like 8s are probably even close. Let's just see reverse raise first in, or the hijack versus low jack. Ooh, it is in there. No, that's a versus a shove. 12 big hijack versus RFI. Yep, so this is versus the raise. So it's like 6s are folding. They're mixing, it's close. 7s is kind of the safe one. But even there, if you look here, 7s are, how much is 7s making? It's making 0.02. 8s are making 0.01. 9s are making like, so 9s is where it's like, so this is what's really important here. Like, look at 8s, 7s, and 6s. They're basically making nothing. Ace 5 suited's making basically nothing. It's like 9s is where you're making a lot. So like this is where I was talking about, and like the mistakes here is like you really want to pay attention to the EV of some of these shoves because of like ace 10 here, not making much money. That's where you really can start to make adjustments, is on these hands with that. You don't want to make adjustments with nines because it's pretty flexible here because it's making a lot. Like eights, even like versus a tighter player, like a lot of players don't raise fold here enough. A lot of players don't have enough raise folds, and their range is just too strong here. And like you should just fold eights and ace 10 off and all those borderlines. Why do 7-7 shove more than 9-9? Because they're probably raising with some suited sevens or something. It's probably it has to do with their, like, they have ace 7 suited. They have, I guess that's the only one. Like they have ace 7 suited, I guess, in there, something like that. But it's just like a blocker thing, I guess. I wouldn't read into too much little details like that. So, all right, we're gonna wrap it up here due to time. I know we kind of jumped around at a different bunch of different spots here, but like just kind of the goal here was just like this is kind of how I noticed when I was reviewing one of my tournaments where I go through and just review everything. I missed like 3 or 4 rejams. I missed some calls, etc. So like I wanted to like work on myself just on some of these short stack spots, and so like that's when I do like kind of a focused study session on these types of things. So this was, sounds, I don't know if it's selfish, like kind of for me as much as teaching you guys, and so kind of showing how I review very specific spots and working on things.